Welcome to another episode of the Clay News and Views podcast. Today I'm excited. This is the most people I have ever had on an episode of the podcast. So we're testing the capability of our recording software. Hopefully things will go smoothly. But I have with me today three people who are members of the Clay County Young Democrats, and we're going to have a conversation about what it's like to be a Democrat and to be a young Democrat in Clay County, which is a very red, very Republican county at the moment. I just want to say, if you are listening to this and you are a fellow Republican of mine and you're expecting me to be mean or rude or nasty about Democrats and what they believe or what they think or what they want to do, you are listening to the wrong conversation. What I want to do is have a conversation with them, get to know them a little bit. A, because I think it's interesting. I think it's an underdog story. B, because these people are your neighbors. They are people that you might see at the grocery store. You might see them around town. These are people that you live with on a daily basis. And I think it's important to have good relations and friendly conversations and get to know people a little bit better. So all that said, I want to go through and introduce you guys. I have Neil, Diana, and Cameron with me. Who wants to be the brave soul and go first? Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to Clay County and how you ended up being a young Democrat.
I guess I'll go first.
All right.
So I'm Diana. I am the host of Clay County Speaks for the Clay County Young Dems is our podcast. A little bit about me. I moved up to Clay County a year and a half ago now from Broward County. Just my husband got a promotion at his job and we're like, okay, moving on up. So I really didn't know anything about this area. And I just kind of wanted to be like fully immersed. I wanted to fully immerse myself in like the community. And it was kind of nice because I was like, okay, I'm going to like a smaller town, right? And so I really didn't have that opportunity to like immerse myself in community in Broward because there's just too many people. So yep, now I'm here and I was supposed to talk about what got me involved.
Yeah,
right?
how'd you end up becoming a young Democrat, right? How'd you get involved?
Okay, so I was watching, the news as people do, and I just got real pissed off one too many times over like the headlines I was seeing and reading, and I was like, I can't be the person like on the sidelines complaining and writing like on like posts just to post. So I was like, let me walk into my local Democratic office. I was given a postcard in the mail when I first moved in, actually, and I was never contacted by the Democratic Party in Broward County. I didn't even know where it was located. And I've been a Democrat for a hot minute. So I got a postcard and I was like, you know what? Let me just walk in there and let me be the change I want to see in the world instead of sitting on the sidelines. And that's pretty much my story.
Cool. All right. Who wants to go next? Neil, Cameron?
So
I'll go. So I was born and raised in Clay County. I went to Montclair Elementary, Lakeside Junior High, and Fleming Island High School. Same with all my siblings. My mom was a teacher in the county for 2+ decades. I have been interested in politics since, I don't know, I was 10 years old. I remember I would come home and my parents would have Fox News on, and my dad was always very vocal about just what he was watching. And then I definitely took in a lot of the views of my parents and my community because everyone at Fleming High School, like all my friends were Republican. I grew up Mormon, so every Mormon I knew was Republican too. So yeah, and I remember coming home in high school, and I'm trying to remember which shows I was always very excited to watch. It was Megyn Kelly. I think she was on at 7 p.m. I think she was on
Yeah.
after Bill O'Reilly at
Yep.
6 p.m. I can't remember. I just it was in that evening time frame, and I was always look forward to coming home and watching her. And then I used to love watching The Five, and then yeah, I just loved watching all the different shows on Fox. And then when I left to college, I feel like this is gonna feed into the Republican fear-mongering and stereotypes a little bit, but it's whatever. When I left for college, I went to Kaiser University flagship campus in West Palm Beach. It's a school with a lot of international students. I would say about 40% of the students there are international students. So I got to meet a lot of different perspectives, not just from within our country, but from outside our country too. And a lot of people were telling me how horrified they were about what they were seeing within the United States when it came to just everything going on with our political system. I think a common view that was expressed to me was that we were descending into authoritarianism and how they don't understand how Americans can see that. And then I started to look at things more critically because I never really had to before that. When you grow up in an area where everyone thinks the same way, and at least from my childhood, it felt like that. Everyone I just knew growing up was a Republican, so it was just default. Like I was gonna be a Republican. And then when I finally got to people started challenging my views freshman year of college, I was like, wait, I started looking things up, started reading things, and I started to come to terms with the fact that maybe everything I was told growing up was not true, or maybe at least there were other perspectives that were just as fair. And then maybe I would say it was 2022 is when I fully like started considering myself. I was trending that way for a while. I would say maybe even like 2021, 2020, I would consider myself maybe an independent MPA. And by 2022, I was definitely left leaning. I voted straight Democrat in the midterms. And yeah, so I think that's kind of how I got involved in the Democratic sphere of politics. And then I moved back in 2024 when I graduated college, and I was very, very set on making sure Trump wasn't reelected. And I got all my friends to vote for Kamala. I convinced tons of people to vote for Kamala. I even convinced one of my family members who had she didn't vote for Kamala, but it was her first time in her life as she left the president part blank because I got her to not stomach Trump, but she still voted Republican down ballot for everything else. And then after Kamala lost, I was heartbroken in a way, not because I love Kamala, but more so I just was fearful for what Trump would do to our country. And of I don't know, November, December, January, I just felt like I was constantly posting on social media and it wasn't going anywhere. And I wanted to channel my anger into other avenues. So I looked up if we had a young Democratic chapter in Clay County, which we did. And I went to one of the meetings. I only had a few people and kept going to some of the meetings. Then I found out that the president at the time of the Clay County Young Democrats, his name was Dylan, he was moving to Malta for school. He was going to be like an international student in Malta. So he asked if I wanted to be president because I already have a political science degree. Yeah, I forgot to mention that was my major. And I said, sure. So I became president of the Clay County Young Democrats in September 2025. And I've been president since. And now we're just, I guess, getting ready for the midterms.
Sweet. Yep. The dreaded liberal indoctrination at the higher education, right? Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that. I want to get into later misconceptions. What basically I'm going to ask you guys the question. What do you think Republicans should know about you that they might not understand, right? I think that might be a good point. But Neil, I don't want to leave you out. Neil, tell us a little bit about you and how you became to be associated with the Young Democrats?
Yeah. So first, thank you for having me on. Appreciate it. Born and raised in Ohio, I came down to Clay County in 2017 for work, bought a house in Middleburg, and so I've been here ever since for the past 9 years. Came across the Clay County Democrats after I'd got to a point in my personal life where I was stable financially and stable, in my home life, and I had some time in my hands, and I'd always been sort of tangentially involved in politics. I followed political news, and I decided to get involved at a more direct level. So that's when I reached out to my local county chapter, started attending their meetings, and that's pretty much it. I've been a part of it ever since. It's been a little bit over a year since I've been involved directly.
Okay. And I met all of you through different things. Neil, you and I met at the Gators Dockside candidate forum ways back, and Diana and Cameron, we met when we recorded an episode of the Clay County Dems podcast talking about, just the differences between Republicans and Democrats. And then we did one on AI data centers. If you haven't watched those, you absolutely should go and watch those. But it sounds like what I hear you guys saying is the same thing that sort of happened to me, and why I started Clay News and Views with a couple other folks is that just sort of popping off on the internet didn't really seem to be doing a whole lot, right? Like I saw things I was frustrated with, things I thought could go different or better, and it seemed like just doing that wasn't really helping much. And I had the thought, how can I actually do something, right? And it sounds like the avenue one of the avenues that you guys have chosen is the Young Democrats. So how do you What are you guys doing to sort of network and build support and gather more people to the Young Democrats? Because like Cameron said, when he first joined, there was a handful of folks there, and Dylan, God love him. I'm glad he got to go to Malta, but he was one of the ones that one of the first Clay County Young Dems I ever had a conversation with was at a protest. It was I think it was one of the No Kings Day protests or something. I don't know, but I was out there just trying to talk to people and get them to sort of share their view on why they were there. And some folks, they see a camera and they assume that you're going to twist their words or you're trying to provoke. But Dylan, pulled me aside and we had a very good conversation. But he did talk about the fact that there weren't a whole lot of people involved, right? So what are you guys doing to help other potential young Democrats know that you're out there and sort of rally them to your cause?
That's what we have the podcast for that we run. We actually just did an episode. I haven't had a chance to edit it or like post it yet, but it was actually all about trying to get younger Democrats in and involved with us and make it, because I feel like sometimes they think that it's just a bunch of like old people, and they were like, I'm not going to waste my time, right? But so we wanted to kind of show that like we're just a bunch of younger people doing life essentially. When that's that one, we're doing like a paint and sip coming up, and so we're trying to get like little activities to just attract the younger crowd. What do you think?
Is it hard? Like how has it gone? Has it been, you feel like you're being successful in your efforts, or is it hard to sift through, because there's a lot of independents and there's even more Republicans and then there's, Democrats in the county. Has it been relatively easy to find people or has it been a bit of a slog?
To find people to get onto the podcast,
or not the podcast, just in general, to get more people involved with the Young Dems, right?
It is hard. It is hard. I think maybe they're just scared to come in for whatever reason. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell you the experience that I have had, right? So Clay News and Views, and before that, the thing, I had my own thing called the Clay County Beacon. I would write articles about something that was happening, right? May I say it was something the school board was considering doing that people were like, oh, that's terrible, don't do that, right? And I would write an article and I'd put it out there on Facebook, and everyone would say, oh yeah, we're going to show up to the next school board meeting and we're going to be there. And people would, I even went to the point, I was like, all right, well, maybe if I make a Facebook event and put the location and people could say that they're going, and sometimes hundreds of people would say, we're going to show up. And then I would show up, right, to cover it from a news perspective, and nobody would come, right? Nobody. And it's very weird how hard it is to get people to get involved. I think people are busy, right? I think a lot of times people are busier than they think. But I also think sometimes people don't want to stick their neck out too, because once you become visible, especially I would imagine if you're a Democrat in Clay County, you stick your neck out. There are some wackadoos out there. I saw it firsthand at the couple of protests that I went to cover from a news perspective. People were yelling some awful things as they drove by. So it's people were probably a little hesitant, I would think, given how some folks like to act. So you guys are sort of the underdog. There's not as many Democrats. I don't think that there is one current politician in Clay County who's a registered Democrat that's elected to any office. How do you guys feel about representation? Do you feel like any of the folks who are elected represent you? Do you feel like you're seen, or your issues, your viewpoints are heard at all? Like how do you guys feel about how well represented you are or aren't?
I'm gonna have to say probably not. I mean, I don't really. I as new as I am, right? I just moved here a year and a half ago, so I don't really know like everybody who's representing me. But I'm gonna probably have to go with no, because I'm a Democrat, and I'm going to assume that they're totally just disregarding anything that any suggestion I would have. But maybe Cameron and Neil would have a better answer for that.
I would say it's mixed. It depends on the person. I mean, we just had Chris Chambles on the podcast with Diana, and he was great. He's a Republican, and he, I think, came across as respectful. And the fact he
True.
even came on the podcast as a top county official within the Republican Party shows a willingness to
Yep. Yeah, he
converse
doesn't seem like
across.
he plays favorites. I believe he is a registered Republican, but I don't think he
Yeah.
doesn't. He seems like he's very fair. He just wants people to be registered and be informed. And if you don't know, some of you guys are Diana, you're a little bit new at the supervisor of elections office. There is a room on election day where you can go and watch them process votes. You can watch
Yep.
the canvassing board make decisions on ballots that maybe look like maybe they have an error or the signature seems off. You can actually go and watch them do some of the work that they do. So he's very open and transparent. And yeah, Chris, I would say is one. Another one that I've always had a good impression of is Tracy Drake, the the tax appraiser. I would imagine if you guys would reach out to him, he would love to come on your podcast, I would bet, because people are always blaming him for tax increases, even though technically he doesn't levy any taxes. He just assesses the values of the property. But I'm curious, Neil, how do you feel? Do you feel represented by the current elected officials in the county, or?
I mean, in a general sense, yes. Just mean that as far as sort of the county level functions, I'm generally satisfied with. My electricity works, my water runs, my trash gets picked up. So at that level, yes. As far as sort of more an ideological perspective, I certainly would refer. I mean, not just to have. I mean, this is a larger issue of the lack of sort of political representation we have in terms of ideology. We're a two-party duopoly in this country. So I would like, just in general, greater political representation. But even within the two-party duopoly, sure, I mean, as a registered Democrat, I in generally align with the Democratic Party more. So I preferred to see more Democrats on the county commissioners, the school board, in our administrative offices. But in general, I have no major grievances. Like I said, I'm not from here originally. I moved down here in 2017, and I've been pretty satisfied with what I've received living here in Clay County.
Yeah, I moved here in 96. I was a kid. My dad was in the Navy. He got stationed here. We moved here and sort of been here ever since. And I know that makes me sound very old because I said a year that starts with a 19 instead of a 20, but whatever. I am, I'm 45, but I'm getting, I'm getting older, but it is what it is. But I think a lot of folks come from somewhere else. It's very hard to find anybody there are a few who've been here, for generations, but I think a lot of folks are transplants. So it's always interesting, especially in the last 4 or 5 years since COVID, as people started to move to Florida in general. We've had a lot more people move to Clay County. So it's going to be interesting to see over the long haul if the steep Republican advantage in voter registration holds over the next decade or so. So let's talk a little bit about local issues. Some of you have been here a little bit longer than others. Cameron, you grew up here. I've been here since 96. How do you guys feel about the state of all the development happening in the county, all the different things that are being built, houses that are being built? There's a big debate happening on more or less development. I'm curious from a young Democrat perspective, what are your thoughts on development?
First, I mean, development's going to happen, and that's just like the truth on growth. If a city wants to grow, it's going to be developed. I would prefer if they did it in an ethical way, like use what you got. Like you have like a big parking lot, like something like space that's just not used is how I see it. Like just if you have a huge parking lot and you want to develop somewhere, use that space instead of taking out the trees behind it for no reason at all. But I'm part of the problem though, because I moved up from Broward County, right? Because I'm part of like the influx of people coming into Clay County. But I like to have like my creature comforts.
Yep.
If I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but like development's going to come, but I think there's like a tasteful way that they can go about it instead of just mowing things down.
Yeah, I think the problem, and I'm curious to know what you, Cameron and Neil, think. I think the problem is the more we build, it seems to get more and more expensive. So in theory, if we have all this development happening, there should be some spaces where there's housing that's more affordable for people, but you don't. I've yet to see that happen anywhere. There's this new Highland Trail that's going in on Henley Road, not too far from where I am, and it's $700,000, $300,000 to $700,000 homes that are going in there, and I'm just like, who is buying those in Clay County? Who is working here in the county and buying these houses? I don't know, but
to me, that sounds cheap though, because it is very inflated in South Florida.
Right,
so we saw like, $300,000 to $700,000 houses, and we're like, wow, what a deal, right? We were like this because it's still like 30 to 40% cheaper to live up here than it is South Florida.
Yep.
And so to us, we were like, wow, this is great.
Yeah, that's part of what drives the prices up. No offense to you. Like, I mean, you can't control, it is what it is. But yeah, people that have equity in homes in areas where home prices are higher end up moving. But Cameron, Neil, what do you guys think as far as development? What's your perspective on it?
I mean, like I said, I was born and raised here. Even my mom, she was raised in Jacksonville. My grandma was born, I think it's St. Vincent's on Riverside. So at least on my mom's side, they go back to Jacksonville a few generations. And I have definitely seen this county grow a lot. I live in an older neighborhood along Doctors Lake in Orange Park, but I remember we would go to Fleming Island for track practice, and all the neighborhoods that are close to a movie theater and around like the high school weren't there for a long time. Actually, like half of Fleming Island wasn't there when I was
Yep.
younger. So I've definitely seen things change. Specifically, also going out to Lake Asbury or the outer Green Cove Springs area, that has just took off, just extreme levels like the growth there. But I'm also not a NIMBY. I'm not. I understand that growth is going to happen. I would just pursue growth in a smart way rather than unchecked sprawl. So I think that means you should just direct your development towards areas with existing infrastructure. That's just what I'm saying. So, like,
So you're just in
maybe,
my camp, essentially.
yeah, but maybe like focus or encourage mixed use, higher density housing in appropriate areas rather than just unchecked urban sprawl that continues going out and out where it's just all single use or family housing residence. I mean, it's just takes so much land, and also maybe just having more protections in place for the Black Creek watershed, where we're seeing a lot of the growth, St. John's River. I think that these major developments or the people behind it should help to pay their fair share behind the cost for these upgrades in response to like the waterways and the stormwater systems and utilities and everything like that.
And new
So
schools too. That's a big one
yeah,
too, right? Like,
and schools specifically, like I said, what we're seeing out there with Lake Asbury, that area, and Oakleaf, that was booming a lot just a few years ago. That's why Oakleaf High School is currently has the most enrollment just because of how many kids are out there. But yeah, I guess that's my focus. It's gonna happen. Just provide the necessary protections for the Black Creek watershed, St. John River watershed. Try to focus the development on areas where there's already some infrastructure there, and maybe encourage mixed use and higher density housing in those areas rather than the type of development that would just encourage urban sprawl where it would just be never ending. And then, okay, what are we going to do? Just all the way out to Keystone Heights 30 years from now, where it's just like single family residential homes. I don't know.
yeah, if
That's
you
how I
drive
see it.
through parts of South Florida, like Hillsborough County in particular, that's what it feels like. A bunch of strip malls and storage units and car washes and subdivisions. Yeah. So, Neil, what are your thoughts on development? How do you where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I concur with my colleagues. Again, I'm part of the problem as well. Moved down here, so it's tough for me to be critical of suburban sprawl when I sit here in my cookie cutter home inside of a subdivision. But yeah, I absolutely concur with Diana and Cameron. I would like to see more mixed use development, more condominiums, and using what we have. I know that I know I was reading a story. I think it was I'm trying to remember if it was in your publication, Mr. Allen, about reusing, for example, a lot of retail outlets as retail has moved to more of an online domain. A lot of in-person retail outlets are empty, and a lot of local municipalities are repurposing them for municipal buildings. So they'll put like their municipal offices, the county clerk office in there, or other offices like the supervisor of elections office. They'll just sort of use these abandoned strip malls and repurpose them for administrative offices. So I think it's a great idea. I like to see more of that using what we have. Speaking to Diana as well, I concur that this is not just with Clay County. But this country has a parking lot problem. Our transportation system is heavily dependent on personal automobiles, which I would like to see a lot greater emphasis and investment on more collective commuting, so trains, buses, things of that nature, and then that way we can put these parking lots to better use as far as housing, parks, I don't know, solar farm, something along those lines. And so we're not just paving over our natural resources to put up parking lots. So yeah, I concur with both of my colleagues in those regards.
Yeah, I think solar farms on parking lots are great. It always drives me nuts. You drive through certain parts. I drove to Tennessee recently for a trip with the family, and we drove through several stretches of what you could tell used to be farmland, But now it's just acres upon acres upon acres of solar, which I get it. It's cleaner than coal. I understand it, but it's one of those things where it's like we can't. I'd rather the government subsidize, and I know this is crazy, and Republicans would hate this idea. I'd rather Republicans subsidize solar panels on every house, right? Than
I agree with
because it's
that.
already our roof's already sitting here sucking up the sun, right?
Energy
So you
Yeah,
become
independent.
yeah.
or parking lots, make
Yeah.
it shaded, make like a cover, and then whoever owns the parking lot can get a subsidy from
Yep.
the solar panels that are on a shaded lot, essentially. So it's like a win-win situation. We get the shade, the car stays cool, and the business gets money from using solar.
And not a single tree has to be plowed over in order to be more energy efficient as a country, right? So yeah, I think in general like I said, the problem that I see with development is that where are the houses for the normal people, right? Where are the houses for the people whose medium average income is something like 60,000 in Clay, right? Where are the houses that those people are supposed to live in, right? Where are the apartment complexes? And there's a few, like there's one going up in Fleming Island, but that's the problem. I'm not anti-development, but I just feel like in Florida in particular, because the way the system works, the developers are incentivized to build slow because slow building drives prices up, right? Lack of supply means more demand, means higher prices. I just hate that. I think if we're going to build or we're going to develop, we should have rules in place to protect things. I think we should never rezone conservation land, right? Because that's what we see a lot. There's been instances of that happening in Clay County. We should follow the rules that are already in place. We shouldn't be throwing tax dollars at builders, right, in order to incentivize them to grow. Let them come in and build the things and take care of what they got to take care of. But I also, Wayne Bola used to be on the Clay County Commission, and his wife used to be a school board member. And Wayne Bola, when he was on his way out, he was term limited. People came and spoke at a Board of County Commissioners meeting, and they called it a housing crisis. And I think you could say, I'm not sure that it rises to the level of a crisis here in Clay County. I think nationwide, you could probably call it that. But anyway, people came to the Board of County Commissioners to talk to them like, we need you to find ways to incentivize affordable housing here for people, just the regular workers. And Wayne Bola's response was, well, the type of people we want to have here can afford to live here. Right. So that's what I see. And I think that's sort of the mantra that we see across the state. Like, we don't care that it's expensive because we want people who can afford expensive. Right. We don't want the average Joe. And I just think that's a shame. So hopefully, we'll see what happens. I think it feels like we're on the verge of a bubble bursting with the real estate prices anyway. Like, things have been dipping down. So I'm hoping that continues a little bit. But let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about schools. Okay. And feel free to say your real opinions, right? I know I'm a Republican asking you your thoughts on education, so you might be hesitant. I'm not going to beat you up over it. But so Clay County is an A-rated school system, right? It has been since 2018. Clay News and Views has done a lot of reporting on the school grades, and they're not really what they seem. But nonetheless, they're the system we have to grade the schools, right? And it's an A-rated school districts. And there's been a lot of hubbub. Right now, we're in the middle of an election season for some school board members. So sort of where do you guys, what are your thoughts on the school system here in Clay? Cameron, you are probably the closest to it of any of us. I'm a Middleburg High School graduate. You're a Fleming Island High graduate, but it sounds like you graduated a lot more recently than I have, because again, I'm old. So maybe let's start with Cameron this time. Cameron, what are your thoughts on the school system in general? You being a fairly recent product of it, from a young Democrat perspective, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I graduated in 2019 from high school, and my mom was also a teacher in Clay County for over 2 decades, and I also substitute teach sometimes in Clay County. So, but I would say there's a lot of issues. I think one of them is pay parity with our surrounding counties. We're losing a lot of veteran teachers to St. John's and Duval County, because if you can just drive an extra 5, 10, 15 minutes and make a few $1,000s more a year, then why wouldn't you do that? And I know that, especially if you're going to maybe Duval, where there's some funding issues and other things, that can present unique challenges, but these teachers are so willing to do it because they're making more. I've talked to a lot of teachers, and also this kind of ties into the other question you were asked about, do you feel represented by your leaders? So yes, for some of them, but no for others. I remember I was at the impasse hearing between the school district and the teachers union, and the school board was supposed to be like the impartial body deciding on the contract. And I remember Aaron Skipper specifically called out Vicky Kidwell, who's the president of a Clay County Education Association, who's our teachers union, and she was basically degrading her. And then she almost was making fun of a union altogether. And I didn't feel represented there. And I could tell you that all the teachers in the room at the impasse hearing didn't feel represented because she's very hostile. And it seemed like that she was trying to blame the current status or the state of teacher pay and everything on the union, and just that there was these asks that were outrageous even though they weren't. We just want pay parity with surrounding counties. So, and I would also say that our school board now is completely made up of people who are either backed by Moms for Liberty or DeSantis or just the Republican political apparatus. Everyone on our school board is pretty far to the right. I don't mind Republicans on our school board. I'm pretty sure Carol Studdard and was it Mary Bola or something? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they were all registered Republicans. They were just willing to work with the union. But no one on the school board right now is willing to work with the union. And in fact, they're very confrontational, and I don't like that. And I will say, I actually I pulled it up because I was curious. So at the impasse hearing, the school board sided with the school district against giving basically, I think it was 1,200 teachers a raise because they said there was budgeting issues. And the union was arguing that, there was a meal and valorem tax, like a meal tax, which is what St. John's and Duval County both used or implemented to raise teacher pay. And Clay County, we had our own meal tax that we voted yes on in November 8th in the midterms in 2022. And Vicky Kidwell, the union was arguing. So here, I'll read you the end of the wording of the meal tax. If I can move my screen. Okay, there. So it says a resolution adopted by the school board. Sorry, it's here. Shall an additional 1 mil of ad valorem millage tax proportionally shared between charter and non-charter, that's another issue, Clay District Public Schools based upon each charter school's proportionate share of a district's total unweighted full-time equivalent student enrollment. And here's the part where it got tricky when it comes to teacher pay. Should that meal tax be approved to fund safety and security for school district public schools, students, and staff, and to provide operating expenses of a district beginning July 2023 and ending on June 2027, which is why we're going to have another meal tax on the ballot in 2028 to fill the gaps that we have now. But basically, the union was arguing that when we're losing teachers, when we're hemorrhaging teachers to other counties, that directly takes away from the security of our students. And also, that's an operating expense because a meal tax in the summary was supposed to be used for operating expenses. And why can't you divert some of the meal tax to operating expenses in terms of teacher pay? I'm sorry, I know I'm going on kind of a rant, but our school district was able to, the digital signs outside of our schools,
Don't get me
they
started.
didn't need to be fixed.
Yeah,
There were several signs that were just fine as is, and they spent like tens and thousands of dollars on
It's got to be upwards of 7 figures on all of the schools.
It was ridiculous.
And for the listeners who may not know, the Clay County School District over the last 2 school years has put in these giant digital billboards as these signs out in front of every school. One example of it being wasteful is I live near Rideout Elementary. If you know where Rideout Elementary is, it's on a side road of a neighborhood, right? There's no exit or entrance to Rideout Elementary on the main road, Henley Road. You have to go into the neighborhood on one of the side roads, and across from the school are backyards of people and fences, and they put a 12-foot tall digital billboard in front of Rideout Elementary, which is giving news and information on a road that hardly anybody drives on. But each one of those signs is upwards of there's tens of thousands of dollars to put these signs in. And I'll tell you, Cameron, I asked the question of a school board member, and I'm not going to say which one it was because they asked me not to, but they tried to convince me that was a necessary expense because somehow those signs tie into some sort of security system inside the school, but it's some sort of a secret secret and they can't really tell you the details of how they do. And I just want to say that I think it's full of baloney. But I think what I hear you saying, Cameron, is when the school district wants to spend money on something, they find that money.
Yeah.
And a lot of teachers last year felt slighted because they didn't find money to give all the teachers sort of at least some portion of a raise, right? Some teachers got nothing, other teachers got a little bit. And
I
then
think
you had two school
45%
board.
of teachers
Yeah.
were left without a raise.
Yep. And sometimes it is a math problem. But again, it's how you present it, right? Like if I come to you, if the three of you work for me and I only have enough to give one of you a very small raise and the two of you other two can't get anything, there's going to be some sort of criteria I have to use to determine who gets what. Right? Or everybody's getting an even tinier bit. But you have to be empathetic and you have to be open and transparent. And as an elected official, you have to be willing to sit there and take the complaints and the anger and the frustration from people and not wag your finger. Well, two school board members got up there and started wagging their finger and sort of talking down to people. And I'll never forget a piece of advice I was given when I started doing, political commentary and writing articles. And they said, whenever you can, as much as you can, attack the idea, but not the person. Right. And the perception of some of these school boards is they're not attacking the ideas or the issues, they're attacking the people. And that has caused them a whole bunch of problems. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Cameron. But
no, you're fine.
You're speaking my language on this stuff. Like that first mill, when it came to the ballot, I told them, I said this to Brodsky and the board members at the time, is this one mill for security? Or is it for other things? Because right now that they're positioning, they're advertising to people, and they spent money advertising it, was that it was for safety and security only. Right, but it had that little tag on the end and other expenses,
and to provide other operating expensive of
right, which is an open ended. We can do what we want with the money because anything could be technically an operating expense,
and that's what the union was arguing.
Mm-hmm. And the union was also arguing. And I've criticized the teachers union a lot, but we'll leave that out of it. In this instance, they were correct because the school district did at one point use millions of that money for health insurance cost offsets. Right.
Yeah.
So when it was other things, they found a way. And again, what I told the two school board members, Aaron Skipper and Michelle Hansen both, is that they missed this giant opportunity to have empathy for the teachers, to look at those teachers and say, like, this sucks. We hate it too. Like, it's okay to say, like, this is a situation we're in and nobody likes it, but here's the math. Here's the money.
I think there's just an empathy problem happening right now in general. People are talking about how empathy is like not something that you should have. When I genuinely disagree with that. But I think like the problem that as a political sphere, just the regular sphere, all spheres, there is an empathy problem because I think it's weakness.
Yep.
When
I've been told that it's I've heard people say that it's it's feminine to have empathy for people, and people assume that empathy means that you have to agree with and endorse everything about a person, to look at the specific situation they're in and say, that sucks. I understand why you're upset. But I used to do call center work. One of the most valuable things I learned how to do was just listen to somebody, even if they were 100% wrong, calling in about their phone bill, complaining and it was their fault, their bill was too high, or whatever happened was their issue and they caused it, to say, like, this situation sucks. Like, it sucks. I get why you're upset. Like, this sucks. Like, and that little bit of like, oh, okay, at least they understand, right? Like, goes so far with people, and it frustrates me when politicians get up there, and it's not just school board, when they get up there and act holier than thou, or like they don't have to take, the brunt of people's anger. It's like, I don't know. I like to remind people, and this gets me in trouble sometimes, is that, in the times of the American Revolution, politicians and political figures and public officials who really got the ire of the public got tarred and feathered. So listen, we've evolved beyond tarring and feathering our public officials. So you should be thankful that all you have to do is sit there and listen to someone be angry. Right. Like, if someone's violent or something, give it to the police, let the police deal with it. But some of these folks, they can't, well, they're mad at me, so now I've got to let them know why they're wrong. No one has ever been convinced, and then I'll shut up and let you guys talk. No one has ever been lectured into not being angry, right? Even with little kids, when you have kids and they're doing something wrong, or they're mad, or they're losing their temper or whatever, no parent lecture where they're like, well, you really should just be thankful for the things that you have. When I was a kid, I didn't even have that. People do not care. When they're angry, they're upset, something has happened. No one has ever been lectured. So when you're sitting on the dais as a school board member and you're lecturing people who are upset with you, that's the worst possible tactic you could take to try to bridge the gap and
right. There's no
peace.
active listening.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah.
lack active listening and they just assume that I think maybe like I haven't been to any of these like meetings yet, but I've seen them and I think what they just assume like they take it too personally.
Yes.
They really do. It's like, and they can't like see outside the little box that they're sitting in. That when someone is complaining, they're not like complaining at you, even though you are the one to make the decision. But they just take it as an attack. And
I think a
that
lot of them have their identities wrapped up in it.
position, if that's the
Yeah,
case, then
exactly. A lot of them
and there's
have
my
their
opposite end.
identities because in America, we are what we do, right? At least that's what our society wants us to believe, right? So if you are, a writer and people don't like your writing, then that it wounds you because that's part of your identity. When, that shouldn't be the case. We are more than just what we do. If you're an elected official, you are more than just that office that you hold, and you should be able to separate that. But anyway, I agree with you. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So a lot of things have been a hot button thing. Let's talk about let's see if we can have a friendly conversation about one of the hot button topics. All right, let's test our friendships here that we've built a little bit over the last few interviews that we've done. Let's talk about book policies. Right. I don't know if you guys saw recently the assistant superintendent of school affairs, I think I might be getting his name wrong, a man named Roger Daly, presented some data to the school board in a school board workshop showing that high school students, by and large, do not check out books. They're not coming to the school libraries and taking books out of the libraries. There's already a big discussion about books in school libraries and what's good, bad, appropriate, inappropriate. He floated the idea that it might be a better use of the space in the schools to take those books out, since kids aren't checking them out anyway, and do some sort of a technology lab. And it went as far, it gained a little bit of national traction. I saw some national news organizations pick it up and start to talk about it. I have opinions, but my opinions, I think, are irrelevant in this. I want to hear from you guys. What just that idea in general, what do you think of that when you hear, let's take that library out of the high school because the kids aren't using it?
Like, I kind of have mixed feelings on that because in my high school, I actually don't think I had a library. I graduated in 2006. I was the first graduating class of that high school, but to be honest, I don't think we had a library. I don't think we did. At least I didn't know about it. And so I kind of can understand like the logic behind it. I don't think if you already had the library there, I personally don't think that they should just take it away or put it digital. Maybe like everyone has like their Nooks or the Kindles or whatever they have to read. Instead of getting rid of the library in full, put it digital. So kids can just check out the book on their iPads, or don't they like give like iPads in schools these days? Anyway,
a lot of the schools have Chromebooks is what they have.
Okay, yeah. So like, and then give them like the opportunity to check out the book digitally. Maybe they just like don't have the time to like go into the library during school. I get that too, because you're, class to class to class, lunch, whatever, your sports. But give them the opportunity to actually check it out digitally. And then there's my thoughts.
And I know I was going to shut up, but I'll just offer my perspective on it. I graduated in 1999, which I know might as well be, 4,000 years ago. But even then, like I was an avid reader. Like I read all the time. If I was, I don't remember ever taking a book out of the school library. I would just go to the public library because I always thought the public library had better books and more books anyway. So when I heard that, I had mixed thoughts. I was like, ooh, first I was like, the optics of that would be terrible, right? People are going to feast on that and it's going to become a story. Sure enough, it did. But then, if we talk about being the school district talks about being data driven, if no one's using the books, why have the books, I guess and I don't know what the right answer is. Cameron, what are your thoughts? You're the most recent graduate. And I promise, Neil, I'm not going to forget you this time. I skipped over you last time.
No, you're going after. Yeah, like I said, I graduated 2019 from high school. I used the library a few times, so like, you guys were saying I didn't really use it that much. I had some friends that use it more than me, but also most of the people I know who use the library were using it for study purposes or maybe just sit down in a quiet space and do work or something. But I'd have more respect for the argument that you could move things digitally, or if you're trying to be responsible with your money, with budgeting and everything, or just because, it costs money to pay librarians. And then you could maybe direct some of that money if you were to get rid of these librarians, which I'm not advocating for. I'm just saying, like, if you're saying this, if people aren't using the librarians, you can, it's a cost effectiveness what you're looking at. However, I think a lot of people are looking at it from a different lens, which is true, is that there has been an attack on books and libraries going for the better part of the past few years, maybe since like 2022, 2021, when the culture war started. So a lot of people, when they see, they're trying to attack libraries, they're not looking at it from the cost effectiveness, viewpoint. They're looking at it that this has been a pattern over the past few years. Clay County has in 2025, 2026 had 287 banned books. Right. One of them was The Color Purple, which is nothing about that book is inherently sexual. Nothing about the book. It describes, I think, like 40 years of a Black woman and her racial struggles in the South. That's banned in Clay County. You have several books that are banned even The Handmaid's Tale is banned in Clay County, which is a little bit, it's kind of, it's not funny. But it's like
it is. Listen, it is okay to laugh at it. The whole thing is ridiculous. Like the whole conversation.
They're banning it, but they're proving the point of everyone who says, "Look, we're kind of turning into that." Or look, it's not like obviously that's an extreme example, but that there are comparisons that can be made. So I would have less of an issue if I knew this was just coming from a genuine place of, hey, let's look at the data, but I don't think it is. I think there's been a concerted attack on books, on librarians, on giving students the ability, even the option to explore things they want to read. And for example, my mom had books in her classroom. They just took all the books out of her classroom just because they didn't want to even have the chance of facing litigation from a parent who came in and said, look, this issue discussed race in the 1960s. I don't want they're indoctrinating my students. But seriously, there's a fear among parents because of how conservative. There's a fear among teachers because of how conservative parents are in Clay County that parents, a lot of them, they are reactionary and they see something and then they lash out, and it's created a fear within a school district that you can't touch any issues. And that's why, I guess that's my thing, because Clay County actually, in the 2025-2026 school year, we had more book bans, more banned books than any other school district within Florida. So I don't know, but I don't know how to go about it, but I just would, like I said, I'd be more comfortable with approaching this conversation if Clay County wasn't the banned book capital within the state of Florida.
Yeah, I want to see the data, right, that he talked about before I would say yes or no to any of that. What are your thoughts, Neil?
Well, I mean, in general, I think reading is good. I guess I could start with that. We're seeing, sort of to take it more of a broader context here, we are seeing a decrease in reading comprehension in our schools. And I think a part of that has been attributed to trying to transition to more digital-based media. And I understand why that's sort of where the modern technology is. But I think now that we're seeing the data come out, that there is a value to analog technology, to just having a book, a paper book in front of a child where they have to read it and they have to analyze it and they have to interpret it, or words and letters on a chalkboard or a whiteboard. These type of analog technologies do seem to be the more proficient methodology for teaching basic reading comprehension and basic learning. And so to see schools ban libraries, I think it's sort of going in the wrong direction. It's sort of relenting to the current trend. And I think we should be trying to push back against that. I think we should be trying to keep, not only keep our libraries, but going back to analog technology and having our children read out of books and write on pieces of paper and read the chalkboard and the whiteboard. And you could integrate technology at a sort of maybe a later level or later on in schools. But I think this is going in the banning books, banning libraries, banning analog technology, going fully digital. We now see the results. The results are in, and they have. We've seen a recession. I think Gen Z is the first generation whose reading comprehension levels are less than that of the previous generation. So I think we're moving in the wrong trend as far as embracing technology, digital technology. It's not shown to be an effective methodology of teaching.
Yeah. I think too, the weird thing that I thought, I listened to that conversation with Roger Daley and the board. No one seemed to ask, well, what could we do to incentivize high school age kids to read more, right? Maybe the answer is like, maybe the books we have in there are boring, right? I do think with the whole book ban conversation, I think it's been skewed by both sides, right? So I think the sort of, forgive me, Cameron, the left wing perspective is like, we're banning books. The Nazis are here. They're, it's Fahrenheit 451. Like they're banning the books. Like, which I don't know that is 100% accurate. I do think it's gone too far in some ways. And then the right wing perspective is like, every single book in every single school is left wing indoctrination, and they're trying to turn the kids gay, like all this crazy stuff that you hear them say, right? Like, which is not, it's just not happening either. What we could say, and I think there was reasonable common ground to find with this stuff, I think there were some books in some elementary schools that had content that probably was too mature for, kindergarten to sixth grade kids. And we should look at that and say like, hey, maybe we move those books up to when those kids are probably mature enough to handle those things. There was probably some books in there that just had all sorts of topics, and that maybe, we're looking at it and saying like, maybe that is not developmentally correct for these kids at this age. I think really the elementary school is where I think you have to be more cautious with the books that are there. And the good news is there are literally millions of books that don't have anything objectionable in them that you could give to elementary age kids and get them to read, right? But the question is, where do you draw the line? So there was a kid's book about Harriet Tubman, who, did all the things that she did. And it was a kid's book. Like, it was a book with like large pictures and like 2 or 3 sentences per page. A person in Clay County, who everybody knows, challenged this book because it painted the slave owners as people who were mistreating slaves. Well, guess what, buddy? That's what happened. Like, that is not that, again, we go too far. We take this thing and say, okay, this sexually explicit stuff in some of these books, let's make sure that A, it has educational value, and B, that it's in the age appropriate library, right? Like, so for certain things, there are certain books. There's a book that I read called Alas, Babylon. And it talks about nuclear war and nuclear holocaust. And there's some sexual overtones in it. And there's some things that for a third grader would not be appropriate. But when I read it in 8th grade, there wasn't anything in there that was a shock to me or that was overly inappropriate, right? I think we've taken what could have been a reasonable conversation about making sure that the libraries are there to serve the purpose of getting kids to read on grade level and read as much as they can, and making sure that certain things are excluded until they're ready, right? And there's some things that might just be completely out of bounds, right? Like, and that's up for I think it's up to each community to sort of decide what that is. But I think, it's gone way too far. But like Cameron said, I'm not so sure that the only motivation is just the data, right? I think that it feels to me like maybe the district is looking for a way to offload the headache of dealing with the book challenges, because the majority of those 287 books that have been banned or removed, whatever phraseology we want to use for it, have come from one person. Like, there's one guy and one group that he works with, who I'm not going to name here because he knows who he is, that have challenged and gotten most of those books banned, right? And some of them were banned in the sense that they were just taken out of elementary school. Some of them were removed altogether. But it's just a shame that cooler heads couldn't prevail and we couldn't come have an adult conversation about appropriateness rather than like, oh, we got to get rid of all the books, right? So anyway, I feel like I'm ranting a little bit. I'm going to shut up about books.
I mean, I agree with you because, like, nope. I agree that like 50 Shades of Grey maybe should not be in
Correct.
an elementary school, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't in the elementary school to begin with. And honestly, 50 Shades of Grey maybe not in a middle schooler. I mean, that's my personal opinion on that one. But I'd say that maybe in a high school library, at that point they're on the way to becoming an adult. And again, like there's like a balance on that.
In a high school library, I think you've got a lot more leeway. I read the book The Godfather in high school as part of a project. And if you've ever read the book The Godfather, there's some stuff in there that a middle school and elementary school kids should not read. And even at the time, I remember thinking as a high school kid going, wait, am I supposed to be getting this as part of a school project? But I think people have weaponized it. Right. They've taken that and they've made it part of this greater culture war, and they've tried to paint every librarian as an evil person. I'm sure maybe there was librarians somewhere that were trying to get kids to read things they shouldn't read. I don't know. Maybe that happened somewhere. Maybe some of them had nefarious motives. But anytime we paint with a broad brush, teachers, it drives me nuts too, because the Republicans in general have sort of had a war on teachers for the last 20 years. And I say this as a person who's married to a teacher. So, the reason that I'm so knowledgeable about stuff in the schools is not because I'm a teacher, but because I'm hearing it from other teachers, for the last 20 plus years. And the Republicans have had a war on teachers and a war on government/public education because they want to privatize it and they want to do at large scale what has been done here with the St. John's Classical Academy, right? They want to take that money and they want to put it into charter schools. And then they want to have people like our very own taxpayer or our tax collector, Diane Hutchings, who runs a company that makes a bunch of money. Now, whether she turns a profit on the money, I don't know, but millions of dollars are poured into her and Cora management to manage St. John's Classical Academy, right? They want to take those public funds and they want to find a way to put it in the pockets of themselves and their donors. And that's really what it is. And Republicans will kill me for saying it, but I don't care because that's what they're doing. So the book challenge debate became part and parcel, another front for that war against public education. And the funniest part of it is that I don't think any of that indoctrination stuff, with the exception of a handful of well-documented incidents, is happening in Clay County. The vast majority of teachers here are just trying to get kids to do the assignments and pay attention in class and read on grade level. And it's a shame that, we've had this giant political whatever. All right. So we've been talking for a while. Go ahead, Cameron. Sorry, I didn't cut you off.
I'd also like to say, just from my experience, I had more vocally Republican teachers going through the Clay County school system than I had Democratic ones. And that makes sense just thinking about the politics of Clay County. But I had, even though they weren't supposed to, I had several teachers at Flumiana High School who were vocal about their support for Trump. I
It
didn't
has no
have
place
one.
in the classroom.
Yeah, I didn't
I'm
have
sorry,
one
it
who
just
was
doesn't.
ever vocal about supporting. I mean, you could get a sense of where they were politically, but I never had one teacher that was vocal about a support for a Democrat. So I just think that is funny. About me talk about indoctrination there, and yeah, I know that they're not like all books aren't being banned or like a million books, but there is an important. It is important to make sure that the books in elementary schools are age appropriate. However, that conversation has started, it's become broader and it's led to dozens of banned books within middle and high schools too.
Yeah,
And
it feels like it's
I
gone
am
off the
not really a
rails.
fan of, I think there should be very, very, very few books that are offline in high schools. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. But I think it shouldn't be hard to come up with reasonable guidelines and say, here's the criteria we use to determine if this book is appropriate to be in a high school, right? And those criteria are probably a lot less than like for elementary schools and junior highs, right? Like, so, all right. So we've been talking for a little bit now. I just want to, what does someone have to do to technically be a quote unquote young Democrat, right? So if someone is hearing this and they're hearing from you guys and they want to be a part of what you guys are doing, what do they need to do and who can be a young Democrat, technically?
I mean, anybody between the ages of 14 and 40, and we don't have anyone under the age of 25 right now, right? So, right, Cameron, you're 25.
Yeah, I'm 25.
Okay. Yeah, I think you're like the youngest one that we have. So, but you can go from 14 to 40 and they could just reach out at any time. Honestly, we have an email, Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah, share the email so it'll be in the show notes.
Our email is claycountyyoungdemocrats@gmail.com. Our Instagram, I think it's just Clay County Young Dems.
I'll put it in the show
think
notes.
it's
If you're
that.
listening to this, I'll get it from them. I'll put it in the show notes. If you're interested in reaching out, reach
Yeah.
out, talk to these folks. So, all right. So let's end with this. What's one thing or two things that you think that Republicans on the other side of the aisle get wrong about Democrats? Tell me something that you think that they need to know differently or understand differently.
Well, I think that they all just assume that we're just a bunch of blue hair libtards who kill babies for fun. And that's, again, my honest opinion there, which is absolutely not true. I've never had blue hair. I've actually had purple hair. So like, get it right. So no, I think they just think we're like psychotic. I don't, to be honest, I actually don't even know. I'm just basing it off the ones that I've seen at like the protests here, because again, I came from Broward County. It's a blue county. So the ones that are toting around their Nazi flags and whatever, those to their brain. I'm Jewish, by the way. So when I saw that, and I was like, what?
Yeah, I think
the
the galaxy brain that it takes to fly a Nazi flag anywhere, it's just like you see those people, and immediately I'm like, well, I'm not even talking to that guy. Like, and I'm pretty right wing. I'm Republican, and if I see something like that, I'm like, well, yep, that person's crazy. So
yeah. So
all right, Cameron.
I think, that's
sorry,
it.
Diane,
Go ahead.
Yeah, Cameron, what's something that you think is a misconception, or just something that you wish that Republicans, here or abroad, what's something you wish that they knew or understood differently?
I think we have a lot more in common than we think. I would think that. I mean, of course, basically everyone in my family is Republican. I grew up around a lot of Republicans. All my family and extended family is Mormon. So I think I just have a lot of personal experience with Republicans just because that's all I ever knew growing up. But we care largely about the same issues. Like I was at the county commissioners meeting a couple months ago about the data centers, and I spoke in favor of the 1-year moratorium. And I saw a very diverse crowd. Like a lot of Republicans, this is one of the issues that a lot of Republicans and Democrats agree on. Same thing with flock cameras and mass surveillance and just
Yes.
all these different things. Like I think when we kind of disregard the culture war stuff and we focus on issues that genuinely have direct impacts on our lives, we are in common agreement. A lot of Republicans and Democrats, we don't like the elites. We don't like the tech billionaires. We don't like a lot of the same things. We want affordable housing. We want our kids to be safe and public safety and all these general things. And we just have the train.
Sorry, the train. I live by the tracks. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
we buy the tracks, but we generally want the same things. We just have different approach on how to go about it. And also, I think just because of the way that social media works and algorithms, we are kind of all exist in our little echo chambers now, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So people are becoming radicalized, and they're starting to hate their neighbors. And because we do live in a deep red county, I have seen some of that like hate. I mean, there are plenty of Republicans that genuinely hate Democrats, and of course there are Democrats that hate Republicans too. But you don't see as much because there's not as many Democrats here. So I hope you guys realize that. For example, at every single Clay County DEC meeting, we start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And you wouldn't think that if you watch Fox News or if you hear Trump call all Democrats domestic terrorists, that Democrats, largely in a room, there's a bunch of old veterans in that room. We get up and we say the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're all pursuing a common goal of bettering our country, right? We don't want to destroy this country. When we want to see our country live up to its ideals that it was supposed to be founded upon, which we don't think we are living up to now. So I think that's the thing. We see the flaws in our country, but we aren't. The problem that Democrats have is blind patriotism. A lot of us love the country, but we love it enough to acknowledge its flaws and want to see it be better. And I don't think allegiance to one leader makes you patriotic, or I don't think allegiance to an ideology or political party, anything makes you patriotic. I think the most patriotic thing to do is to see the flaws in the country and to want to see it live up to its full potential. And I hope you guys, I've been going on a little rant, but I hope you guys know that we love this country too. We have the same concerns. We are all struggling because of affordability and different things. And that if we could all just get together and come to an agreement that if we could just, I don't know.
If we could see each other as people,
yeah,
right? Like you see, like it's not.
We're not
Cameron is not an
terrorists.
evil Democrat. Cameron is Cameron, right? Diana is Diana. Like they're not just these evil ideologues that are looking to like destroy everything you love. Like and
no, yeah. So that's basically all I was saying is that I hope at some point, as the income inequality and the affordability issues just continue to spiral out of control, we realize that it's more of a top and bottom issue versus just everyone teaming up against each other. And I think when the working class, I'm not trying to sound like a communist, I'm just saying when a working class realizes that we share the same issues and when we have the same enemies, not promoting violence, but I'm just saying we have the same enemies, we can finally maybe come to like a greater peace with each other.
Yeah, we can. I'll leave it at that. I think well said, Cameron. I don't disagree. I do think that there's a lot of people with money and power who want regular folks like us to be so busy arguing with one another that we can't affect real change. Now, obviously, the change that I would like to affect may be different than the change that a young Democrat would like to affect, but I have said many times, I think we see the same problems. We might envision different solutions to those problems, but we're all impacted and we all see those same problems. So, Neil, that's a little bit to live up to, because I think Cameron sort of hit a banger of a rant there. So what's something that you wish Republicans might know or understand better about Democrats?
Well, I concur with both of my colleagues, and I especially concur with Cameron said. I think I could probably maybe take it from a slightly more practical perspective, remembering that because of the mechanisms that we use, we have like the electoral college and first past the post voting. These are pretty poor tools to achieve representation, an actual representation of what people really think and feel. So there's a disconnect between the often the elected officials in power, party administrators, and sort of the rank and file and our opinions. So I would sort of, and this can cut both ways, try to be cautious about judging an individual based on the more prominent aspects of their party, the like I said, the elected officials and the party officials. And if you have conversations with just sort of regular people who just happen to be affiliated with either political party, I think you'll find, as Cameron stated, there's a lot more in commonality that we share. I have a lot of disagreements with the Democratic Party. I have a lot of disagreements with how the party functions. I have a lot of disagreements with the individuals who are in elected office, with the party platform. It's the system I have, so I this is what I have to work with. There's an old saying in card games: you play the hand you're dealt. Well, this is the hand I got dealt, so I got to play it as best I can. But when you just sort of, I do my best to work with all citizens, all people, regardless of party affiliation, Democrat, Republican, non-party affiliated, third party, trying to get to the common goal, as Cameron said, of having a better country, a country where all people flourish and are able to achieve their goals and their dreams. I think that's something that we all share in common. So,
Yep. Yeah, and only thing I would add is if you were a Republican listening to this conversation, I just want to stress to you enough that there is no harm in two things. There's no harm in being kind to the people that you disagree with. And there's no harm in sitting down and having conversations with people. You can agree to disagree, you can walk away, whatever. But there's no harm in just trying to get to know people and understand their perspective better. So my goal with these conversations, is to get to know you guys and to let people hear from you and hear about the Young Democrats and see your perspective on things. And also show that reasonable people of different perspectives and different opinions can sit down and have reasonable conversations. And we can find common ground. We can do exactly what Cameron was talking about, what Neil and Diana were talking about. We can come to agreement on the things we agree on and figure out how to work together on those things. And we can agree to disagree on the rest and sort of, do what we do outside of these conversations to advocate for our viewpoints on those things. And I appreciate all three of you. Also want to give a shout out to Pat Jorgensen. She has organized a lot of this and has clued me into things and really been very welcoming. And I will tell you, my fellow Republicans, the very last thing, and I promise I'll shut up and let you guys go. There's never been a time where I have been around these folks that I'm interviewing here and the other folks that I've talked to as part of these different events where anybody has tried to chase me off. No one has cussed me out. No one has treated me terribly. No one has treated me poorly. And I would just encourage you, if you see some of these folks, whether they're out on the street corner advocating for a candidate or if they're protesting, whatever the case may be, instead of honking your horn and go buy a couple bottles of water and come give them a bottle of water and have a conversation. And if you walk away from that feeling attacked or disappointed, I'll reimburse you for your water, but I can almost guarantee you that will not happen. So anyway, Cameron, Diana, Neil, I appreciate you. I thank you for trusting a hardcore right-wing Republican to to host you on a podcast and have a conversation. And I will make sure that I put the email address and the Instagram tag in the show notes. So if you guys are interested in learning more about them or being a part of what they're doing, I reach out, let them know. And I think we'll end it there. I think it's been a really good conversation and I appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much. This was really nice. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Allen. I appreciate you again hosting us, and I would just like to say that I am subscribed to your Substack, Late News and Views. It is excellent.
Subscribed too.
Yeah, it's local news is critically important, and I think you bring an excellent perspective, a journalistic perspective, to the Clay County area. So I would encourage anyone who is watching this podcast, please take a look. at the Clay News and Views Substack, and I would highly encourage you to subscribe. Local news, local media needs as much support as it can get right now.
Yeah, and we also, at Clay News Reviews, we called it Clay News Reviews on purpose. We do try to report the news, but we understand that sometimes our viewpoints are going to slip in, and we want to represent the views at large of people, not just the views of the three of us who currently write. So if you're interested in writing about the news for Clay News Reviews, hit us up. None of us get paid. There is no money to give you, but you can have the feeling of satisfaction of giving back to your community. But again, thank you guys. Appreciate it. And we need to set up, well, I'm going to end it here. Let me hit the stop button and then something else.